The damage to the economy will remain long after the pandemic is gone. But today's update did not include any new significant stimulus measures. What does the government hope to do to mitigate the impact of the virus recession, given that the stimulus measures so far seem to be temporary?
Well, firstly, today was an update which summarized a very long list of measures that we've taken since earlier this year to boost our health system, to support the economy, and indeed to support and protect jobs. The situation in Australia, while challenging, while we've presented a challenging set of numbers today, we all know why we're here. We're here because of the impact on the economy and consequently the budget of the global coronavirus pandemic. So there's a clear reason for it. Australia is in a comparatively better position than most other countries. We're in a better, stronger, more resilient position than most other countries, both in economic terms and in terms of our budget and indeed in terms of our health outcomes so far.
Jobs remain the big issue, though. You're forecasting a jobless rate of 8.75%. At the time in your support, it seemed to be winding down. Is that reasonable?
Before the coronavirus crisis hit, we had an employment growth rate at twice the rate than compared to the OECD average, twice the rate compared to the OECD average. We are dealing with a challenging situation right now, but things are heading in the right direction. I mean, the economic contraction in Australia has been much less than in other parts of the world. The employment impact has been much less than in other parts of the world. And in the month of June, we had 280,000 Australians go back into the labour market. The participation rate went up. The number of hours worked went up. Underemployment went down, and 210,000 jobs were restored in the economy. So yes, there's still some challenging times ahead, but we continue to make the decisions to provide support in the economy and to business and to protect jobs as appropriate. But we do have to get back into a situation as close as possible to normal. We do have to get back into a situation where viable businesses pay for the wages of their employees out of their own income rather than having to rely on taxpayer-funded support.
Minister, if needed, is there any wiggle room for further stimulus to help jobs, given that somehow the government found an additional 20 billion Aussie dollars to support the jobs program?
Well, we will continue to make judgments to put the Australian economy on the strongest possible foundation and trajectory for the future. I mean, we are taking measures across the board, including providing tax incentives to businesses, encouraging them to invest in their future growth and success so that they hire more Australians again. I mean, that's of course what we'll do. We'll continue to pursue our deregulation agenda, our ambitious free trade agenda to give exporting businesses out of Australia the best possible access to markets around the world, our infrastructure investment program, and indeed our energy reform. So we will continue to make all of the necessary decisions to give businesses around Australia the best possible opportunity to be successful in this current environment so that they will hire as many Australians as possible in the months and years ahead.
Minister, we had your boss, I suppose, Scott Morrison, talking about a few months ago about him expecting the economy to be more or less humming along nicely in the middle of July. Well, clearly with the outbreak of the coronavirus again, in particularly Victoria, that's not going to be the case. How concerned are you about this recession deepening?
Well, I think you're misrepresenting what the Prime Minister has said there. I mean, the Prime Minister earlier this year said that our objective was to get the economy back to as close as normal by July, and we are in that position. Yes, we are dealing with a localized outbreak in one state or in one jurisdiction out of 8. And there's some trends in New South Wales that we're obviously keeping a watching eye on. But across Australia, overwhelmingly, there's no community transmission. There's a very low number of active cases, and businesses are coming back, jobs are coming back, and the recovery in large parts of Australia, at least in many parts of the economy, has started. So, look, I mean, we'll continue to do what we can. Of course, we've got to continue to manage the risk of outbreaks into the future. But we've also got to focus. We've got to put in context where Australia sits compared to the rest of the world. Our economy is in a stronger, more resilient position than most. Our health outcomes are better than most, and we've just got to continue to do everything we can to stay on top of it.
Absolutely. And the fiscal side, of course, you're doing some of the heavy lifting there, and the central bank, the RBA, is also doing the heavy lifting. Do you think they could do more, in your view, Phil Lowe and co? Do you think that they should be perhaps going towards negative interest rates to help support what's going on in your efforts?
Well, our central bank makes decisions on monetary policy independently, and I'm not a commentator on monetary policy. I would just point to statements that the Reserve Bank governor himself has made in the past, that he doesn't envisage a circumstance or a scenario where we would enter into negative interest rate territory. And the government will continue to do what we need to do to provide the appropriate levels of fiscal support. And let me just make this point. On an international comparison basis, even after the crisis level expenditure that we had to incur now, our debt levels are still lower than the debt levels of many other countries before they went into this crisis. So if you look at our gross and net debt levels as a share of GDP, they continue to be comparatively low, which gives us the necessary fiscal flexibility should further fiscal support, should further support measures be required into the future.
Mr. Cormann, no economy is having a good time of it. What are you most worried about looking ahead?
Look, until such time as there is a safe and effective vaccine that can be distributed, that can be mass distributed around the world, we will have to continue to manage the risk of the coronavirus in our lives. I mean, it's a highly infectious, terrible virus. It's going to be with us for some time, and we've got to ensure that we keep the economy going in the best possible position, while the coronavirus remains. And so we've got to find the right way to run things in the economy in a way that is COVID safe while the virus remains around. And that challenge is going to be the key challenge for some time.
Minister, are you concerned about household debt? Currently, debt-to-income ratio of 200%. Could household debt derail the economic recovery in Australia?
Well, that is not what we're seeing right now, but I mean, clearly, in periods of higher unemployment, that is one of the risks that you've got to monitor. I mean, and we are providing, historically unprecedented income support into the economy, both through the JobKeeper and JobSeeker programs. But I mean, this is one of the things that we'll have to continue monitoring into the future. I mean, I've got to say, our banks here in Australia have been very good in working with their customers where that was required to help them transition safely through this period, and this will be a watching brief. But at this stage, it's still looking okay.